Hello, this is Patricia, welcoming you to the 2131st edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline 8th of February 2018. The readers this week are Patricia, Romany, Mo and Katherin, with Den on the controls. The editor was Phillip and the production and distribution team is Peter, Sandra and Reena. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon and Harry Breuer, performed by Jean-Jacques Perret and is used with his kind permission. The local news stories that we'll be reading come from the Enfield Independent and Palmer's Green and Southgate Life magazine and are their copyright. The events information has been collated by us from other sources. The lead story this week, campaign aims to get people voting. And before the news, the sunrise and sunset times for the week beginning Monday the 12th of February are 0722 and sunset 1708. Do get in touch with us to share your own news and special announcements. We love to hear from you, and if you have any comments about the Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 020 8805 6578. She is your listener's representative and will be pleased to help you. And now, Romany will read the first item of local news.
Campaign aims to get people voting. A campaign aimed at increasing the number of people registered to vote in May's local elections comes a century after women's suffrage success. Enfield Council launched My Vote Enfield on Tuesday, 6th February, 100 years to the day after some women were given voting rights by an Act of Parliament. My Vote Enfield makes people living in the borough's 63 wards aware that, by registering to vote, they will be able to have their say on who represents them after Thursday, the 3rd of May. Enfield Council will send household information letters to homes from February 9th to confirm the names of people on the electoral register. To register, people need their national insurance number, date of birth, address and full name. The process takes around 5 minutes to complete. If already registered, it is not necessary to do so again unless residents have changed their name, nationality or address. Ian Davis, Enfield Council's chief executive, said, "This year is very important in the history of democracy. It's 100 years since the Representation of the People Act, marking the moment when some women were finally, after years of campaigning, given the right to vote. Whilst much inequality remained, this was a watershed moment in the UK. If you are not already registered to vote, but are eligible to do so, why don't you make 2018 your year of action? Your ward councillor represents you, provides a voice for the community and can help improve your local services. If you want your views to be heard, please make sure you turn up to vote on May the 3rd. The deadline for registration is Tuesday, 17th of April. Go to www.gov.uk/register-to-vote or call 020-8379-8588 to register.
Raising awareness of Raynaud's disease. Nobody likes feeling the bitter cold, but if you're suffering from Raynaud's disease, winter can be a particularly painful season. The condition, which affects the hands and feet in cold temperatures, or when you're stressed or anxious, is associated with reduced blood circulation to the affected areas. To mark Raynaud's Awareness Month throughout February, we spoke to Dr. Faye Christopherson, Medical Director at Push Doctor, to find out more. What exactly is Raynaud's disease? The disease is a condition that temporarily constricts the blood vessels and affects your circulation. Although often triggered by cold weather, the painful symptoms can also be brought on by holding cold items. There are two different types of Raynaud's, primary and secondary. Primary is less serious, and symptoms generally tend to be mild and manageable, while people experiencing secondary Raynaud's will usually have more severe symptoms, and there might be other underlying health issues. Dr. Christopherson notes, sometimes there's an underlying cause for Raynaud's disease that will need to be treated. However, in most cases, the condition doesn't lead to serious problems. What are the symptoms? One of the most telling signs of Raynaud's is discoloration of the skin. As well as the hands, it can also affect the feet, nose, ears, or nipples. Look out for the affected body part turning blue or white due to restricted blood supply before returning bright red when you return to a warm environment or you de-stress. Your fingers might feel very cold, or you could experience pain, numbness, tingling, or stiffness. Should you see a doctor? If it's bothering you, yes, says Dr. Christopherson. A doctor can prescribe medication that can help you manage your symptoms, and they may also recommend a blood test to rule out anything more serious, such as rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. So how can you relieve the symptoms at home? The most important thing you can do to relieve repeat episodes is to learn what triggers there are for you and take steps to manage them. You can make sure your home stays warm, wear gloves and thick socks if you're heading out. She also advises running your hands under warm water while getting plenty of exercise will also improve your circulation. If stress is your trigger, try relaxation techniques and try not to drink caffeine, says Dr. Christopherson. For further information, visit sruk.co.uk.
Government to launch faulty white goods database. The London Fire Brigade has welcomed a victory in their Total Recalls campaign. The government has plans to launch a public database of potentially deadly faulty white goods. Almost one fire a day in the capital involves white goods. For the past 2 years, the brigade has been asking the government to make changes so that white goods are safer. This includes making it easier for consumers to check whether they own potentially dangerous goods through a centrally managed database. The government will form a new Office for Product Safety and Standards after recommendations from the Product Recall and Safety Working Group. One aim will be to set up a comprehensive database of corrective actions and recall programs for consumer goods. Charlie Pugsy, the brigade's Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Fire Safety, said, "This is a huge success for our Total Recalls campaign. Consumers need to be able to check quickly and easily if they have a potentially deadly appliance in their home. And this announcement appears to be a very positive step in the right direction. We also want to see greater regulation of second-hand appliances, changes to the way fridges and freezers are manufactured, and the inclusion of sleeping as a factor in risk assessment. And we will continue to campaign for all of these measures." Mayor dons suffragette sash. This week marks the 100th anniversary of the Representation of the People Act, which gave some women the right to vote. At the most recent Enfield Council meeting on Wednesday, the 31st of January, the Mayor of Enfield, Councillor Christine Hamilton, donned a suffragette sash. And the story is actually illustrated with a very striking picture of the Mayor in her white, purple and green sash. Other councillors joined the Mayor in wearing purple, which is one of the colours identified with the UK's suffragette movement. Councillor Hamilton will wear a suffragette sash for the following 2 Enfield Council meetings. The Representation of the People Act, passed on the 6th of February 1918, gave the vote to 8.5 million women aged over 30. But it would be another 10 years before the Equal Franchise Act gave women equal voting rights to men.
Community cinema finds new home. A volunteer-led touring cinema has a new home. Enfield's Talkies Community Cinema is to screen films at Waterhouse Hall Theatre in Compton Road, Winchmore Hill, at least 5 times in 2018. David Williamson, Talkies founder, said, "We have been searching for the best venues for community cinema and are really pleased to open in Winchmore Hill. Waterhouse Hall Theatre has a fine drama tradition with the Compton Players, and now cinema will add to the cultural mix." Talkies' first film offering is A United Kingdom on Saturday, 10th February. One of the Talkies volunteers is television producer Helen Tunbridge. She said, "Forget the multiplex charm of popcorn chomping in your ear and the disturbing glare of a mobile phone. Civilization reaches N21 at last in the shape of Talkies Community Theatre."
Group's anniversary. A woodcarving club is celebrating its 30th anniversary. Latvian Second World War refugee Witold Janis Bukovskis, known as John, held the first Enfield woodworking club on February the 9th, 3 decades ago. Although John passed away in October 2004 at the age of 78, the club has continued. It meets on Tuesday evenings between 7:30 and 9:30 at Chase Community School. Enfield Woodcarving Club currently has 8 members, and people wanting to join are welcome. Club organiser George Anglis said, "Going forward, we aim to continue evolving as a club and get as many people as we can involved in this fascinating, rewarding and relaxing hobby. Here's to the next 30 years. For more information, visit www.enfieldwoodcarvingclub.com.
6-year-old to donate hair to ill children. A 6-year-old schoolgirl who has never had a haircut is having it trimmed to help make wigs for children with cancer. Willow Lucinda Locke, who is a Year 2 pupil at Grange Park Primary School, is donating her hair to the Little Princess Trust. The charity makes wigs out of real hair for children who have lost theirs through illness. Enfield town-based hairdresser Emma Clare has offered to cut Willow's hair during the February half-term. Willow has also raised over £500 on her Just Giving page and has since increased her target to £1,000. Willow's mum Amy said, "Willow making the decision to donate her hair was a very easy one. She understands that her hair could help another little child struggling with hair loss due to this terrible illness, and we are so immensely proud of her for that. Sadly, this touches everyone at some point in their life, whether it be personally or through family or friends. It makes it something that is incredibly relatable, and the generosity of everyone who has donated so far has been remarkable. Willow is such a kind girl, and it's lovely that even at her young age she is so considerate of others. We couldn't be prouder of her." To make a donation, visit www.justgiving.com/fundraising/Willow donating her hair.
New cafe to open. A new cafe where people meet to try to solve contemporary problems over tea, coffee and cake is to open. The Enfield Philosophy Cafe at the Dugdale Centre opens on Friday, the 9th of February. Former university lecturer Alan Murray, who also helps run the Enfield Poets Stanza Group, is giving people a place where they can discuss debates in philosophy and apply them to modern-day problems. Alan said, "My professional background is in philosophy. I did my first degree at Middlesex University. I also taught philosophy at the university. I wasn't too sure whether there was going to be much interest in the Enfield Philosophy Cafe when I came up with the idea, but there clearly is. I've had an extraordinary response, actually. I think there's an appetite for discussion as changes in society have taken place in recent years. The idea of the cafe is to create a space where people can sit down and discuss important issues in a rational way." Alan will introduce the theme of each cafe with a short presentation on a central philosophical debate. A group discussion on how those ideas relate to the modern world will follow. And if that story's whetted your appetite, there's an email contact address that you can use to get more information by contacting Alan. It's alan@enfieldphilosophycafe.com. And that's Enfield Philosophy Cafe, all one word with no spaces.
Volunteers celebrate World Wetlands Day. Children joined volunteers in planting trees for an ongoing wildlife project that will cover an area the size of 2 sports fields. They met at the Prince of Wales Wetlands on World Wetlands Day, which was on Friday the 2nd of February, to plant and name young tree saplings. 1,000 tree saplings and 50 larger trees will eventually be planted at the open space. Enfield Council has been working with the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust on the project. Councillor Daniel Anderson, Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, said, "The wetlands will both reduce flood risk to local properties and will help create a more diverse habitat for our wildlife. Over time, it will also provide an exciting outdoor learning space. This is a great opportunity for the community to come together and nurture this fantastic project."
And now for a letter from Leslie East, OBE, entitled Respect the Law. I completely concur with the pro-cycling group's call for greater protection for cyclists on our streets, brackets, Enfield Independent of the 24th of January, close bracket. But cyclists have to realise that pedestrians also need greater protection. Under the Highway Code, it is illegal to cycle on the pavement, and yet one is constantly encountering cyclists who ignore the rule. On 2 occasions recently, I have narrowly missed being hit by cyclists cycling illegally on the pavement, one of whom was going at a considerable speed. Any discussion about better conditions for cyclists must surely also require cyclists to respect the law.
And here we have David Hughes's opinion in his letter titled Cycling Culture. Three of 4 contributors to your opinion page on the 31st of January excoriated Enfield Council's decision to build cycle lanes along the A105. All 3 illustrated drivers' sense of entitlement rather than the common good. The 4th complained about the effect of the construction on bus services. Chips down, the council knew from the Mini Holland beginning that the reduction in carriageway space would lengthen queues at traffic lights, pedestrian crossings and behind buses. But they also knew that many car journeys on the A105 are short and often driver only. journeys which could easily be replaced on foot, by bike or bus. The expectation is that eventually the penny will drop, that drivers will decide to travel differently, taking a small step towards a healthier lifestyle and reducing emissions. Cycle lanes will promote the probability that more people will feel safer than before and take up cycling voluntarily, with benefits to everyone's health, well-being and pocket. B. Graff demeaned older people by assuming that they cannot walk or bike. I'm 80, I have a car, but most of my local journeys are cycled. He also thinks that the new cycle lanes should already be alive with cyclists. Get real. Cars killed the UK's cycling culture. Cycle lanes will help coax it back over time. Phil Murray is right about some cyclists' unsocial behaviour. Naughty, but I don't agree that cyclists should always wear a crash hat and reflective clothing. Lots of gear to fetch a loaf of bread is discouraging. Dr. Miller is angry about the armadillo cycle lane delineators. I'm angry about dangerously, selfishly driven cars and their emissions.
Henry Jacobs writes about Holocaust Memorial Day last week. He says, I was present at Enfield's Holocaust Memorial Day event at the Dugdale Centre, which was reported in the Enfield Independent last week. Firstly, I would like to thank Enfield Council for their superb organisation and presentation of the evening. Although not mentioned in your report, I would like to mention the outstanding speech made by Rabbi Emmanuel Levy of the Palmer's Green and Southgate Synagogue. Rabbi Levy powerfully recalled the inspirational words of wartime Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill, when in Britain's darkest hour he rallied the nation behind him and contrasted the positive words of Sir Winston against the evil propaganda instituted by Nazi Germany in scapegoating Jews and other minorities. As pictured in your report, the choir from the Wolfson Hillel Primary Jewish School in Southgate sang with great feeling, contributing much to the success of the event.
And now another letter from Kay Brown. This is Help on the High Street. As our local independent, perhaps you could convey the impacts of a message communicated nationally in the Independent newspaper by an Enfield resident. The letter, lamenting Enfield town, highlights broken windows, voids, shabby fronts and such in our borough's capital, and goes on to blame the council and cycle lanes forced onto the area for the situation. Outside of the clear fact that there are no such lanes in Enfield town, in brackets, but a linked plan rejected by locals had been put forward to regenerate the centre. Just where is there the need to do this? Did the Prime Minister and accompanying business leaders convey to the Chinese on their recent visit, yes, we'd like your business, but we've rising violent crime or air that kills or crammed public transport or the worst productivity in the G7 and so on? Of course not. High streets across the UK are really up against it. Even the large supermarkets, the only positive performers last year, are now announcing huge redundancies. Cheap shots such as this one, sent nationally, are not going to help bring trade or investment to our borough or increase the pride people should feel in their home area. We all want successful high streets. The Mayor, our council, Enfield residents, and not least the business owners themselves. Perhaps everyone acting with rather than against that grain would be doing all such stakeholders an extremely large favour.
And now for some sports news. Ignatians are still in danger. Defeat leaves Enfield with work still to do to make sure of their status. Enfield Ignatians came down to earth with a large bump against a fired-up Hammersmith and Fulham side, as they were caught cold in every sense in the wet and the rain in Donkey Lane, falling to a 24-8 defeat. The home side's display was baffling, considering Saturday's game was the proverbial five-pointer, and Captain Jake Bates said, "Our skill level was poor and not on a par with the two previous games. A win in our next game against Tabard is now paramount." The loss saw Hammersmith leapfrog their opponents into ninth, and with 11th placed Harrow closing the gap to 4 points by beating London Nigerians, the Blue and Golds have work still to do if they're to survive at this level. Ignatians were their own worst enemies and endured a nightmare opening quarter as winger James Lowe pounced for scores 1 and 3, either side of another try from centre Tom Parkinson. All Enfield could muster in reply was a Bates penalty. The second half was an improvement as Ignatians had the edge territorially, but they were unable to capitalise on their attacking opportunities. And they were to pay the price when disaster struck again as Hammersmith, off limited possession, won a scrum close to the 22nd. The more fluid visitors banked right, and good handling saw Keith Rogers beat the last line of defence for the bonus point score. It was the worst possible outcome for Ignatians, but they continued to attack, and from the line out close to the line, they made some good carries before prop Lewis White eventually breached the line, but it was too little, too late.
Enfield's struggles continue with defeat. Enfield Town travelled to Lowestoft Town as the Enfield Independent went to press, bidding to end a run of 6 league games without a win after a poor first half showing saw them slump to a 3-1 defeat at Thurrock. Last night's trip to Suffolk was given the green light following a 1 p.m. pitch inspection, but Andy Leese will be hoping his side perform better than Saturday, when a bad end to the opening 45 minutes all but determined their fate. The Towners started positively enough, with Ryan Blake forcing Thurrock keeper Ben McNamara into the first save of the contest with a left-foot shot, following a flick from Ryan Blackman, before Samir Bimutin fired over from distance. Matt Nolan was making his second appearance in the Enfield goal, in place of the suspended Joe Wright, and after punching clear a corner, he spilled a shot from James Good, but the visitors managed to scramble the ball clear from danger. But Nolan was to be beaten for the first time after 15 minutes, when a run down the Thurrock left went unchecked, and a low ball across the penalty area was converted by the unmarked Jordan Clark. Brad Watkins headed Adam Martin's lofted ball over the top of the crossbar, but Clark wasn't far away from doubling his and his team's tally when he headed Joe Osayemi's cross over from close range, narrowly off target. The visitors kept looking for the equaliser, with Watkins curling a shot wide, and along with Blake also forcing McNamara into a save. Martin was off target with another effort, as was Tyler Campbell, but Town were to effectively lose the game in the closing stages of the first half. Perry Dunn doubled Thurrock's advantage when he bundled in an in-swinging corner, before, on the stroke of half-time, Clark and Ronnie Wynne combined on the left for the former to cut the ball back for Joe Christou to calmly score the third goal. Enfield did try and make a first of it after the break, but McNamara was not unduly troubled, while their opponents also had half chances to increase their advantage. But Town did reduce the deficit with 15 minutes remaining when Mickey Parcell sent a looping header over McNamara and Liam Hope made sure from virtually on the goal line. Hope was to have one more opportunity, while with 5 minutes remaining, Sam Youngs hit a superb long range that bounced out to safety off the inside of the post as Town suffered a 4th straight defeat in all competitions. The defeat leaves Leese's men 16th in the Bostik Premier Division table, 4 places and 5 points above last night's opponents prior to kick-off.
Right, and this is another sports article, Borough Bag 8 in Incredible Town Triumph, and this is where a hotshot, his name's Kennedy, scores 5 times to set a new club record. The record books were rewritten as Enfield Town fought back from another poor start to take 3 points with a remarkable 8-4 home victory over Hatfield Town. The home side had found themselves fortunate to be only 1 goal in arrears 30 minutes into Saturday's first half. No one could have guessed that a further 11 goals would be scored in the next 60 minutes, with Borough claiming the lion's share. Enfield were all at sea early on and were a goal down in the 7th minute. From a free kick inside the centre circle, no one tracked Cook's run, and his layoff was slotted home by Keith Shuttleworth. That lead should have been doubled 10 minutes later when Hatfield were awarded a penalty, but White put his effort wide. Having been let off the hook, Borough got back into the game just before the half hour when Tage Kennedy side-footed home after being set up by Bruno Tavares. The hosts then went in front 2 minutes before the break when Kennedy rounded the keeper after Sivi Bayo stole possession. And there was still time for Enfield's top scorer to complete a first-half hat-trick after intercepting a poor back header to the keeper. Tavares made it 4-1 with a 20-yard shot 7 minutes after the restart. Toby Kirkham reduced the deficit with a firm header, but the 3-goal advantage was to be restored when Bayo converted a penalty. Darren O'Brien reduced the gap again to 5-3 following a poor pass from Wael Hassan, but Kennedy then turned provider for Tavares. Kennedy netted his 4th to make the score 7-3 after substitute Solomon Enwabuakai Stepover had wrong-footed the Hatfield defence. That lead was to be reduced again by O'Brien, but the best was saved for last as Kennedy found himself closely marked on the byline, but flicked the ball with his heel over his marker's head, chested it down and converted it from the narrowest of angles, ensuring he became the first Borough player to score 5 in one match.
Next, we have news of a local group who are putting on a production of the Vagina Monologues to raise funds for the local charity, the Enfield Women's Centre, at the Zippola Cafe in Enfield on Tuesday, the 13th of February. Now, we've learnt the show is a sellout, but if you are still interested and want to support the campaign, we'll be giving details of the website at the end of the item. Vagina Monologues set to raise money for Enfield Women's Charity. A fan of Eve Ensler's Vagina Monologues discovered that anyone is able to put on the show in their area during the month of February. Yasmin Knowles-Smith, a teacher from Enfield, looked for the production online. She was considering going to see it again and discovered that these February so-called V-Day events enabled anyone to get free access to the rights of the script. Eve Ensler encourages communities to put it on all over the world, Yasmin explained. Because it's a global movement, you must make money for charity that supports women in your local area. It can't be a national organisation. 10% goes to their official charity, Spotlight. Yasmin put a call out on Love Your Doorstep, who identified the charity Enfield Women's Centre and also asked for people to get involved. Around 10 businesses have offered raffle prizes to help raise more money. Debbie Dean from the creative company Art Start came forward and is going to make table vagina decorations for the event. Chuen Yan from Bake Off is even going to bake some fortune cookies that look a little bit like vaginas. We then got these 11 women ranging from their 20s to 70s, and all from the area, Jasmine says. Everyone chose the monologues they wanted to do, or ones that resonated with them. So, as we say, the event itself is a sellout, but if you want to learn more about the V-Day and its campaigns and the fundraising, you can visit the website www.vday.org.
And now a collection of articles from Palmer's Green magazine. In 1871, the railway line from Wood Green to Enfield was opened and a station was built in Alderman's Hill to serve Palmer's Green. Despite the advent of the railway, this did not immediately lead to mass building. At the time, Palmer's Green consisted of wealthy landowners who resisted the change which they had witnessed to the east. Building, therefore, usually followed the sale of an estate after a death, and things started to change dramatically in 1902 when large tracts of land formerly owned by the Taylors of Grovelands were sold off. The first area to be developed was the old Park estate between Fox Lane and Alderman's Hill, which is now known as the Lakes Estate. This was rapidly covered with large semi-detached houses which were built by a great variety of small builders. At the same time, building work began on the Hazelwood Park estate between Hazelwood Lane towards Hedge Lane. Hedge Lane, now a busy arterial road, was aptly named, for the old photographs in 1927 show it as a rutted track with no pavements or lights and lined with dense hedges. Beyond on either side was open countryside and farmland. The lane was just a track for hay carts to wend their way between the hedges down to Huxley Farm, situated where Ash Grove lies today. Apart from Huxley Farm in 1927, there was only one solitary dwelling on its northern or left side, and none on the right, and a narrow bridge would take you over the New River. Owned by the Huxleys of Weir Hall in the 17th and 18th centuries, the Huxley estate was at one time immense, stretching to Silver Street, though by 1920 it had been reduced to 179 acres. Huxley Farmhouse may still be remembered by some of our older local residents. The farmhouse was a fine-looking two-storey building. Spacious and roomy, it had a porticoed entrance, which is a porch with a roof supported by columns, shaded by trees, its front wall clad in greenery. Its distinctive white picket fence lined the edge of the lane. It survived longer than most farms in the area, finally yielding to developers in 1931. The one road on the southern side of Hedge Lane was King's Arm Lane, or Honeysuckle Lane as it was more popularly known. It meandered northeast towards the farm from the site of Truro House. This lane entered where Connaught Gardens does today. It was an important lane in many respects, for its track led from Green Lanes along what is now Oakthorpe Road, across the New River eastwards through the hamlet of Chequers Green to emerge in Hedge Lane opposite Huxley Farm. From here, the route could continue northwards via Furze Lane towards Bunce's Farm or east towards Edmonton. Similarly, Tile Kiln Lane, now Tottenhall Road, plotted a winding course. It took users through the last remaining tollgate in North London and over Pims Brook into Blind Lane to emerge into King's Arm Lane. Housing building stopped during World War I and was not resumed in Palmer's Green until the mid-1920s. Gaps left on earlier housing estates, such as the old Park Estate and the Hazelwood Estate, were filled. The builders then turned their attention towards the Edmonton border, rapidly developing the Hedge Lane and Furze Lane area. The 1936 edition of the 25-inch to the mile Ordnance Survey map shows Palmer's Green fully built up. Rumour has it that the site of the homes today on Hedge Lane, which used to be garage plots, was used during World War II. Eyewitness reports recall seeing aircraft wings being transported in and out of the units. As the years go by, it is wondered what other interesting facts will be lost forever. But if there are any stories left to tell, please get in contact with the author of this article, Ellie Sells.
Further Tales from Palmer's Green Tales by Jenny Burke. Palmer's Green Tales have been very busy since my last article. John Solis made a film about the redevelopment of the Fox Public House, and meanwhile Susan Mamet and myself have made 2 films about some very interesting developments in our local area. The first one was an interview with Ian Puddick, who has set up Old Bakery Gin. He can be found at www.oldbakerygin, all one word, .com. He set it up in Pimm's News N13. Ian had found an illegal gin distillery while he was renovating some premises which used to be a bakery, and the rest is history. The gin is now stocked in some extremely prestigious places, such as Fortnum's, as well as being sold at local markets, Majestic, and of course it is stocked at the Winchmore Public House. The pub was one of the first places to stock the gin, and suggested to Ian that he sold it at the N21 festival, which is where Susan and I met Ian. This film has become our most popular to date and has had over 3,500 viewings in just under a month. One of the shops in Pimm's Mews was owned by Tom Maish, who was a famous bicycle maker, and according to Ian, tourists come from as far away as Japan to be photographed under the Tom Maish sign. So please let me know anything you remember about Tom Maish and his bikes, as we'd like to make another film about the restoration of the Mews. Our third film is about Laura Scaramella, who has set up Parla Italiano in Palmer's Green. We're very lucky to have such a wonderful facility in our area, and Laura tells us why she decided to set up her language school and how successful it has become. The latest venture for the school is classes for children, which should prove to be a wonderful extra-curricular activity. Laura can be contacted on IANO, all one word, .co.uk.
Well, we had an article earlier about the Talkies Community Cinema, which is operating in our borough. And now we have their events programme for the next few months. We may have heard this one a little bit earlier, but I will refresh your minds. So coming up on Saturday, February the 10th, at the Waterhouse Hall, N21, is the film A United Kingdom, the story of King Seretse Khama of Botswana and his controversial marriage to a British white woman, a British working class white woman that challenged the conventions of the time. Then after that, on Saturday, February the 24th, at Christchurch in Southgate, we have Sleeping Beauty, a sumptuous Gothic fairy tale with a twist on the classic story. Matthew Bourne's Sleeping Beauty will delight dance fans of all ages. After that, we have Thursday, March the 1st, at the Dugdale Centre in Enfield Town, Trishna. Adapted from Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Trishna is a story set in India about a tragic love affair across the economic divide. Friday, March the 9th, at the Bounds Green Club, Loving Vincent. Stunning animated film about the complicated life and controversial death of the artist Vincent van Gogh. And then Saturday, March the 31st, at the Waterhouse Hall in Winchmore Hill, Piccadilly. And this is where Talkies creates a 1920s cabaret evening with live burlesque before a classic of British cinema starring Anna May Wong.
And now we have some parliamentary comment. Firstly, by Bambos Charalambos MP, no to education cuts. Ahead of the general election held in June last year, I joined teachers, parents and pupils in Palmer's Green to campaign against education funding cuts. In my maiden speech, I said, education is a cornerstone of success in life. It plays a key part in breaking down inequalities and promoting tolerance and understanding. But unless we invest in our schools and children, those aims will be lost. I also said, I will challenge the cuts to education funding and champion a properly funded education system. As education is one of my top priorities, I've continued to put pressure on the government in Parliament. In July, I asked the Minister of State for School Standards, Nick Gibb MP, about school funding. And that same month, I asked the Right Honourable Justine Greening MP, Secretary of State for Education, about the impact of national insurance contributions, pension contributions, and payment of the apprenticeship levy on school budgets. The responses were disappointing and failed to understand the financial pressures faced by schools. I was lobbied in Parliament on the 24th of October by concerned teachers, school governors, parents and students, and we were all uniting in our serious concerns about school funding. Nick Gibb wrote to all MPs stating that the government will be making more investment in education, but this simply isn't what's being felt on the ground. 22 schools and academies in our constituency are facing budget cuts under the government's plans, and even those making gains from the new funding formula face real terms cuts when inflation and increasing school costs are factored in. I've received loud and clear messages from our schools that class sizes are increasing, extracurricular activities are being cut, parents are being asked for money. Teachers and support staff are dipping into their own pockets to pay for supplies and equipment. Schools are being forced to cut back on the curriculum, and staff are being made redundant or not being replaced if they leave. Support for SEND children is being slashed, and local authority funding has been severely reduced, affecting schools' key support and improvement services. Chronic, historic underfunding of our schools is not being addressed by the government, and our children and school staff are suffering. When I contacted the Minister to raise these concerns, I received another disappointing response, ignoring the experiences that I relayed to him and shifting the blame onto individual schools' own financial management. I went on to question the Minister about the adequacy of the capital funding for schools and about the real terms funding shortfall. As for higher education, which is saddling our young people with astronomical debt, I questioned the government on whether they plan to cap or reduce the interest rate applied to student loans. Unfortunately, the short answer was no. Education will remain a priority for me, and having benefited from a good local education and free university tuition, I know the difference it has made in my life. Our young people deserve the same.
And this is an article from Councillor Ayrton Hura with regards to quieter neighbourhoods. Firstly, may I take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy new year and hope you all had a good Christmas. On a positive note, to start the new year, the cycle lanes are now nearly complete, despite numerous corrections and modifications to faults in the original design, and the temporary traffic lights and road closures gone. On a negative note, however, the predicted traffic building up behind buses and bus stops is slowing traffic down, and I personally have seen many irresponsible drivers taking risks and overtaking the buses when there is oncoming traffic. As a result of the increased number of traffic lights, crossings, extended bus stops, some drivers have taken to using minor residential roads and are avoiding green lanes altogether. In addition, our once wonderful iconic Palmer's Green Triangle has been reduced to a glorified traffic island. This now leads me on to the recent quieter neighbourhoods in inverted commas consultation. If this is the first time you've heard about the consultation, then I'm afraid I have bad news. The consultation ended in November 2017. Whilst there is much to the scheme that warrants merit, such as 20-mile-per-hour zones, it also proposes the installation of speed humps, road narrowing, no entry points and new one-way roads. This will lead to a significant loss in the number of parking spaces available in these roads. Both I and numerous others, including local resident associations, requested that the so-called consultation was premature as Cycle Enfield works were still being undertaken and traffic patterns not fully established. I also requested that the consultation period be extended and that council officers agreed to a public meeting with residents for a Q&A session. The response was a simple no. It therefore looks like this is simply another fake consultation from the London Borough of Enfield and that the ruling administration will simply impose its will again. Sadly, a few more shops have closed down in Palmer's Green, including Starbucks, which was a destination for many of us needing a coffee fix. There are rumours that others may also be leaving, with some blaming the effect of the loss of parking along green lanes and the loss of footfall. I hope the rumours are untrue and that the vacant shops are also let as soon as possible. I would encourage everyone to use our local shops as much as possible. I certainly do. Finally, could I take this opportunity to warn all local residents that there have been a number of break-ins and attempted break-ins in the area, with one of them resulting in a resident being attacked with a screwdriver and requiring hospital treatment. I would urge you all to ensure you keep all of your windows and doors locked and, if possible, install security lights, alarms and CCTV.
And now some news from the arts. Introducing Patrick Samuel, who is an Asperger's artist. We welcomed Patrick Samuel, an emerging artist with Asperger's syndrome, to our Palmer's Green Community Gallery this January and February. A time of prolific work as well as recognition followed, and Patrick has embraced his neurodiversity as a gift rather than seeing it as a disability. He's found his voice and his calling. Marking 1 year of his creative journey, Patrick hosted his first solo exhibition at the Dugdale Centre in Enfield, which ran from November the 7th through to December the 2nd. With 66 paintings and drawings on display, Escape and Return was an overwhelming success. The private view was chosen by Enfield to launch its bid to become London's Borough of Culture, and the exhibition was visited by many people from North London area and beyond. Patrick's work resonates with people a lot, as more than 30 of his artworks have found a new home. Art has changed Patrick's life for the better, not least thanks to the strong support of the community in Enfield. Many residents have helped him with art materials, frames, canvases, and local art fairs have provided him with a place to present his work and practice social skills, something very important to a person on the autistic spectrum. Escape and Return wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Dugdale Centre, the sponsorship of businesses, both local and national, and the backers on Kickstarter, many of whom are Enfield residents as well. Patrick has produced an extensive portfolio in a wide range of genre and media. He is stimulated by bold, contrasting colours, intricate details, multiple textures, and varying shades of light and dark. Patrick is working primarily with pastels, graphite pencils, and acrylic, but he also enjoys experimenting with watercolours, glass, and oil paints. His work and his story have been recognised in the local media, and meanwhile it featured in magazines as well as on BBC Breakfast and BBC News online. As a spokesperson for autism awareness, Patrick has been giving talks about the benefits of art therapy, and he hopes that by sharing his work and his story, he can inspire other people who are thinking about venturing into art. He is currently preparing for 2 further solo exhibitions. Patrick can be contacted on 077 57 39 5049.
Well, now we've reached the end of our programme for this week. Thank you for listening. So from the team of Romany, Mo, Katherin, Patricia and Dem on the controls, it's goodbye. Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet. Put the memory stick into the packet in a closed position and return it to us as soon as possible, in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget, you can call Diane de Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking Newspaper on 020 8805 6578. Coming up next, the latest news and information for the Greater London area from InfoSound. The Enfield Talking Newspaper will be back with you again in 1 week's time.